the conversation with us. I'm looking at a piece here from Newsbusters, and this Newsbusters piece by Tim Graham refers to a column written by Thomas Edsall on the pages of the New York Times. And what Thomas Edsall does is he unloads on conservative talk radio. And he says the reason that the Republican Party has been in the tank when it comes to presidential elections is conservative talk radio. Here's the pull quote from the piece. There is a striking correlation between the rise of conservative talk radio and the difficulties of the Republican Party in presidential elections. And so the New York Times is complaining, this Thomas Edsall is complaining about conservative talk radio because he claims that conservative talk radio is pushing the Republican Party, quote, off the deep end, end quote. And he's mourning over this. He is lamenting over this as if Thomas Edsall cared about the health and the future of the Republican Party. It's just absurd to think that he has the best interest of a conservative political party in mind here. See, the reality is, now this is where they always give the game away. The reality is if Thomas Edsall believed this, if he believed that conservative talk radio, like what you're listening to right now, if he believed that this is responsible for the declining fortunes of the Republican Party and in the end will be responsible for the demise of the Republican Party, what would he be doing? He would be cheering for conservative talk radio. He would want the influence of conservative talk radio to grow. He would want the influence of conservative talk radio to increase. He would want our listening audience to grow exponentially. So it's very clear he doesn't actually believe that. He does not believe that conservative talk radio is a threat to the Republican Party. He believes that conservative talk radio is a threat to the liberal political agenda. So he's willing to lie and distort and mislead in order to try to shut down conservative talk radio, because this is the place where the real threat to his agenda can be found. Now, a couple of items on the religious liberty front. Here's a woman in Concord, New Hampshire. Now, this woman has been praying on the front steps of her school now for some time, and she prays out loud. She reads scripture passages. She's not obtrusive. She doesn't get in anybody's face. She's very quietly but verbally praying out loud for the students as they come into the school. And the reason she's been doing that is there was a report that 2 bullets were found in a school restroom in February. So she found out about this, these bullets in the bathroom. She realized that whatever that means, it indicates that there's some sort of threat to the safety and security of the students on the campus. Nobody knows how those bullets got there, at least from what I've been able to read, but there they were. And this raised a concern in her mind. She's got 2 students to go to the school, so she began to pray every day. And predictably enough, the secular fundamentalists, I'm not sure which organization, it's the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They're the ones making trouble all over the country. They went to the school and said, you got to shut her up. You got to stop her. This is unconstitutional. You can't let this happen. Even though she is a private citizen who has the First Amendment right to freedom of speech, the First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion, and she's on public property, which she paid for with her own tax dollars. Freedom from Religion Foundation says you got to put a bag on her head, you got to put a sock in her mouth, and the school has gone about doing that exact thing. So realize how radical. They accuse us of being the fringe. This is how extreme, this is how radical, this is how far out on the edge secular fundamentalists are. They would rather the students in that school be shot than be prayed for. You give them a choice, they will say, I would rather students on that campus get shot than get prayed for. That's how radical they are, and they accuse us of being the radicals. Now, we've talked about this before, but I want to remind you of these 2 stories because they are very disturbing stories, very important stories, and it's important that we keep these right in the front of our minds. We are going to be doing an action alert on Monday with regard to this one story. It has to do with what's going on in the United States Air Force. We've talked about this before, so this is revisiting it, but we cannot revisit this enough, in my estimation. This is about a Christian chaplain in the United States military. He's serving at the Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Alaska, so he's a chaplain. He is responsible to provide spiritual instruction for the troops. That's his job. That's what we are hiring him to do. That's his responsibility to do this. So he's a chaplain. He's in the military. He's a member of the United States military. And he has been officially censored for engaging in free speech and for doing his job. And anti-Christian activists, the Christophobic bigots from the military religious freedom, that's Mikey Weinstein and his bunch, are demanding not only that he be censored, but that he be punished, that he be exposed to some kind of military punishment for doing his job as a chaplain. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Reyes, R-E-Y-E-S. He is a Christian chaplain. He's serving in the United States Air Force. Now realize his duties, his military responsibilities are to provide religious instruction and spiritual counseling. That is his job. That's why we have him in the military, because our military from the days of George Washington has recognized the importance of spiritual strength for military strength. You know, George Washington, first commander-in-chief, first thing he did is he appointed chaplains for the Continental Army back in 1775. He said our military strength is entirely dependent on the providence of God, his care, his nurture, his protection, his assistance. We cannot do that without having chaplains who will meet the spiritual needs of my troops. Got to have them. First thing he did. Military strength directly correlated to spiritual strength. Military vibrancy connected to spiritual vibrancy. George Washington understood that. Our nation in all of its history has understood that until this president, until this administration. And now there's an effort to purge Christ, to purge God, and to purge followers of Christ completely out of the United States military. They want to get rid of Christians, and they want to move militant, aggressive homosexuals into their place. Remember, these aggressive, militant homosexuals, they were Hitler's stormtroops. They were in the military. We have tried the gays in the military thing with Nazi Germany. That has been tried. How did that work out? Having gays in the military, having militant homosexuals being the driving force in the military. How did that all work out? Well, we've been there. We've got a historical example of what gays in the military will do if that's allowed to go unchecked, and that's exactly where they want to take us. That is, they want to take us to unchecked presence of homosexuals in the military and the advance of the homosexual agenda. So anyway, this Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Reyes, he is a Christian chaplain doing his job. He has a page on the website of the base, the Air Force base there, that's called Chaplain's Corner. And he recently wrote an essay. The title of the essay is No Atheists in Foxholes. Chaplains gave all in World War II. Now that expression, no atheists in foxholes, is attributed to a Catholic priest in World War II. Now Dwight Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, popularized this when he included it in a 1954 speech. Now he's speaking now, 1954, he is the President of the United States. He is the former commander of the Allied forces in World War II, responsible for the success of D-Day, responsible for our victory in World War II. That General Dwight David Eisenhower. He's the one that had chaplains who prayed for the success of the military under his leadership in World War II. And here's what he said in 1954. This was, and I don't remember if this was in connection with the inclusion of Under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, or whether it was in connection with the campaign to make In God We Trust the official motto of the United States, which it is. It was adopted in 1956. So one of those two things, either Under God in the Pledge or In God We Trust as our national motto. He said this is President Eisenhower, I am delighted that our veterans are sponsoring a movement to increase our awareness of God in our daily lives. In battle, they learned a great truth that there are no atheists in the foxholes. And this just lit off Mikey Weinstein and his bunch. They went after the base commander, Colonel Brian Duffy, demanding he take action. And not 5 hours later, in response to this anti-Christian, Christophobic, bigoted diatribe from Mikey Weinstein and his bunch, the base commander, Brian Duffy, pulled this column down off of the website of the base, and the commander of the base apologized to the Military Religious Freedom Foundation for not stopping him from doing his job and sharing his religious thoughts. If a chaplain cannot share religious thoughts, why do we even have chaplains in the United States military? And, of course, that's where they want to go. They want to get rid of military chaplains. So realize this now. Realize how radical the leftists are. We just saw that leftists would rather students get shot at than prayed for. That's where they're at. They would rather have students shot at than being prayed for by a concerned parent, by a concerned woman praying on school property. Now, we see that radical leftists, secular fundamentalists, would rather we lose wars than have chaplains. They would rather that the United States of America lose wars than have chaplains sharing Christian instruction and Christian encouragement and Christian motivation in the military. He wants them to be punished. So again, I just want to stress how radical, and this Mikey Weinstein, this is a guy that described Christians as fundamentalist monsters, and he was talking about yours truly. When he wrote that piece, appeared on the Huffington Post, he went after a retired Brigadier General Jerry Boykin, who's now the Vice President of the Family Research Council, by name, and he went after me by name, and he went after our organizations, Family Research Council, the American Family Association, the two organizations he singled out in that piece, and he called us fundamentalist monsters. He said we are committing treason against the United States. We are enemies of the Constitution. Said that anyone who shares his faith in a military setting is guilty of spiritual rape. That's the guy that got this chaplain's essay pulled right down off of the website. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to stress just how radical these left-wingers are and why we got to fight them. This is trench warfare, ladies and gentlemen. We got to fight these guys to the last ditch, because what they want to do will endanger the safety and security of our children in our schools and will endanger the safety and security of the United States of America. So again, let me repeat, I do not want you to miss the lesson here. Secular fundamentalists are so committed to removing all traces of God from the public square that they would rather see our kids shot at than get prayed for, and they would rather that we lose wars than have our troops prayed for by chaplains. Who's the radical now? Focal Point AFR Talk.